All right, my lovely students, it is that time. Time to make some test corrections for our quiz on comparing and ordering fractions, decimals, and percents. All right, question number 1 said to compare with greater than, less than, or equal to the fraction 3/5 to 68/100. Okay, when you're working to compare numbers, you either need to make them all fractions, or make them all decimals, or you can make them all percents. Here I'm going to make these both fractions. And when we make them fractions, they need to have the same denominator. So 68/100, because the 8 is in the hundreds place, I can write it as 68 over 100. Easy fraction. Now I'm going to turn 3/5 into another fraction, its equivalent, with the denominator of 100. To do that, I'm going to say to myself, 5 times what gives me 100? Hopefully you were deciding that it's 20, and indeed it is. So you multiply the top by 20, and we can see we get 60 hundredths. Now, looking at these fractions, they're cut into the same kind of pieces, hundredths. And so we look at it, 60 hundredths is less than 68 hundredths, which means 3/5 is less than 68 hundredths. Now for question number 2. We're going to compare again with greater than, less than, or equal to the fractions 4/9 and 7/15. Okay. 4/9 and 7/15, they are not the same denominator, which means we need to make them the same denominator. We can do that by finding their LCM. We can find their least common multiple, or we can find any number, any multiple that they have in common. So looking at LCM, we have 15, we have 9. 15, my next one would be 30, then we have 45. For 9, I know 9 goes evenly into 45, so my least common multiple would be 45. I'm going to use 45 as their common denominator. So now I just have to figure out 9 times what gives me 45? It is 5. So I'm going to do the same thing on top because I want to make equivalent ratios, meaning they're equal to each other. So I have to keep it balanced. 4 times 5 is 20. So 4/9 is also called 20/45. And I'm going to do the same thing over here. 15 times what gives me 45? Well, I can see from my multiples chart, it'd be 1 times 1, 2, 3. So it'd be 15 times 3 gives me 45. So I'm going to multiply the top by 3. So 7 times 3 is 21. And I can easily see 21/45 is larger than 20/45, which means 7/5 is going to be greater than 4/9. And now to question number 3. Question number 3 says, write 4 2/3, 4 5/6, 5 1/4, and 3 3/8 in order from least to greatest. Show your work. Well, least to greatest is going to be important here because we must list them from smallest, so the smallest number, to the largest number. Well, I can tell by comparing my whole numbers that 5 is more than 4. So 5 1/4 has to be my last number, which means B is not going to be the correct answer because it's said to go from least to greatest, not the other way around. Now looking at my remaining fractions, I can see that they all have the same whole number. So that's not going to help me decide which is the smallest number. Instead, I need to look at their fractional pieces. So I'm going to look at 2/3, 5/6, and 3/8. Now, just like we did with number 2, these do not all have the same denominator. So we need to make them have the same denominator. We can do that by finding their least common multiple, which again is just our sideways t-chart. In this case, it would be 24. So now we're going to convert it from the fraction that it is to a fraction where the denominator is 24. So I'm going to say to myself, 3 times what gives me 24? Answer's 8. So I'm going to multiply the top by 8, and I get 16 24ths. So 2/3 is also called 16 24ths. I'm going to do the same thing with 5 6. 6 times what gives me 24? It would be 4. So I'm going to multiply the top by 4, and I get 20 24ths. So already I can see that 5 6 is going to be bigger than 2/3. And my last one, 8 times what gives me 24? That would be 3. So I multiply the top by 3, and I get 9 24ths. So far, 3/8 is going to be my smallest fraction. So 4 3/8 is going to be the smallest one. That means I can take off D. The next smallest one would be 4 2/3. So I'm looking for 4 3/8 and then 4 2/3. Answer would be A. And this is the third smallest, and then we have our 5 1/4. And now to question number 4. The table shows sporting events that kids ages 6 to 17 like to watch. Which event do more kids like to watch? So we're looking for the one that is the most. As you can see, they're all different fractions. So once again, we have to turn them into like fractions. Well, 52 hundredths is perfect, just like it is, because it's easy for me to turn the other two fractions into their equivalents over 100. So I'm going to say to myself, 20 times what gives me 100? And that would be 5. So I multiply the top by 5. I get 55 hundredths. Well, look at that. That's more than the X Games. So far it can't be X Games. Next, I'm going to say 5 times what gives me 100? That would be 20. So I'm going to multiply the top 2 by 20. That gives me 40. 40 hundredths is smaller than 55 hundredths, so it can't be the World Series because we're looking for the event that more students like to watch. So the answer would be the Olympic Games. Notice, it's easy to show your work. You can do this, ladies and gentlemen. Okay, question number 5, moving right along. We're going to place the following fractions, decimals, and percents in the proper category. The categories are less than 1/2, which I know 1/2 is also 50%, which is also 50 hundredths. And then we're looking at more than 1/2. Okay, so looking at it, 91 hundredths, well, that's more than 50 hundredths, so that would go here. 91 hundredths. 25%, well, that's less than 50%, so that would go on this side. 4/7, well, if I can figure out what half of 7 is, then I can tell if 4 is more than 7. Well, half of 7 is 3.5. And 3.5 is less than 4/7, which means 4/7 is going to go on this side. Next, 49 hundredths is less than 50 hundredths, so it would go on this side. 17% is less than 15%, so 17% would go there. And 2/5, we just saw that in the previous problem. 2/5 as a denominator with 100 is 40 over 100, and that's less than 50 out of 100. So that would go here as well. And now our final question. 3 stores sell the same backpack at the same price. Store A has a 40% off. Has it for 40% off. Store B has it for 1/4 off, and Store C has it for 5/10 off. Place the numbers correctly on the number line. Well, 40% I know is 40 hundredths. 40% we know is 40 out of 100, 40 hundredths, so it would go here, A. And 1/4 to go to its hundreds, I would multiply by 25. So I'm going to do the same thing on top. And I get 25 out of 100. So 25 hundredths, that's going to be halfway between 20 and 30 hundredths. And then 5/10. Well, I know 5/10 is also called 50 hundredths. So it would be here. So I have A in the middle, B is my smallest, and C is my largest discount. Which store is giving the best deal? Well, it would be store C. Because C has it 50% off. So it's half the price. And that is our test corrections for comparing and ordering fractions, decimals, and percent.